Hi, everybody. This is the Listening Lounge with Tom and Allie here at the Long Beach Public Library in Long Beach, New York.
We're two vinyl collectors that turned our love of music into a community-centered project called the Listening Lounge. This month, we took our show on the road to visit Mark Sendak over at High Fidelity Records in Amityville to talk about his essential album, Black Sabbath's Paranoid. Hey everybody, today we are at High Fidelity Records with owner Mark Sendak. Mark has owned the shop for 20 years here in Amityville and is a longtime Long Beach resident. Thank you so much, Mark, for having us here today. Mark has been instrumental in getting our collection off the ground. We come here to buy records. We talk to him about what he considers essential, and today he's going to share his essential pick, which is Black Sabbath's Paranoid. Paranoid was released in 1970, widely considered the essential heavy metal record of all time. And just for some perspective, it came out the same year as George Harrison's All Things Must Pass, Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel, and Led Zeppelin's 3. So very different from what was going on at that time period.
Yeah, a couple different vibes in literally the 4 albums you just listed.
Yeah,
so.
right?
Yeah, I mean, technically it was released in the UK in 1970 and then in January of 71 in the US. But yeah, all those essential albums you just mentioned were 71. That's right. Zeppelin 3. Paranoid, and what was the? Oh yeah, All Things Must Pass. All in 71. Amazing. Yeah. That's incredible.
Big year.
Big year. So Mark, what makes you consider Paranoid an essential record?
Paranoid got me started with Sabbath. Actually, it was Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll, but it was the song Paranoid that got me started with Sabbath. So then I bought the album after that. At the time, I could only, afford cassettes because CDs were, still up and coming and still very, very expensive. And I had a tape deck at the house. And some friends in school were talking about Ozzy. And I had already heard Blizzard of Oz and loved it and everything. And then I bought Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll on cassette, brought it home, and it scared the crap out of me. And because Black Sabbath was the first song to come on, and it was just different than anything that I had ever listened to.
Right.
And then I liked the song Paranoid, and I think Iron Man was on there, and a couple of other, they never were a hit band, but a couple of other hits. Paranoid was actually the only song that became, I think, a top 10 hit in the UK. Yeah. I don't even know if it charted in the top 10 or 20 here. It might have. But, so anyway, then I bought Paranoid, and I think I was telling you before, it's just 8 songs, but they're all essential. There was one instrumental, Rat Salad, and then every other track on there is just killer, no filler.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so heavy.
It is. I mean,
what else was going
for 71, I mean, it's just crazy what was going on. They even became heavier even after that because Master Reality came out for their 3rd record, which was even tuned down even a little lower because Tony was still hurting his fingers. But yeah, that's just, it's crazy what was going on. Nobody was doing that in 71.
Yeah.
Nobody.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is.
What they influenced.
Yeah, sure.
It's kind of crazy that I haven't really listened to any Sabbath at all, like across my lifespan. So this was like one of the first records I dug into.
Yeah.
And for you to tell me it's like, they did
I'm
this in
envious.
70, and then they went heavier than this. I'm like, well, I guess I need to listen to the next record as well.
Yeah. When I was in like 8th or 9th grade, I remember, everybody was listening to, early 90s hip hop, and I was a metalhead at heart. So, Megadeth, at the time, early Slayer and, Metallica, obviously. Sabbath was like the building block, the stepping stone to all of those bands. For them too,
Yeah.
I mean, they predated everything that came out. Priest, I mean, all those bands, their blueprint was Sabbath.
Yeah.
So do you think they're like foundational for a lot of those?
100%. That core 4, Geezer, Iommi, Bill Ward, and Ozzy. They were just the stepping stone for all of that, to happen. It was just one of those matches made in heaven, like Zeppelin. It was just made to happen. It's amazing that they just found each other in one small Birmingham town in England.
Birmingham, yeah. It's wild. One of the comments, I was doing, research as a librarian does, and someone said this isn't a record; it's a historical document.
Yeah,
and I think that's really true.
Yeah, that really sums
that
it up.
sound was the blueprint, and I think we're Gen X, and you're a millennial. And it's interesting what you said because you were already into that heavy metal, but you went back to Black Sabbath.
I did, yeah. There's a lot of metal acts that like I listened to back then that I don't listen to anymore. Some of the heavier stuff, the really heavier stuff.
Yeah.
But Black Sabbath was always that. Honestly, to me, they were a hard rock band. I mean, they even labeled themselves as a hard rock band,
right.
and then they kind of took it and they're like, okay, maybe we did discover heavy metal.
Fine,
but yeah, right. We'll take the credit for that one. I remember Iommi for like many years in interviews, like saying like we're hard rock, or Ozzy was saying we're hard rock.
I don't know how you can say that when you hear like that bass and it's just so sludgy.
Geezer's bass was that wall of sound.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't even know how to play when they first started.
Oh,
that's
wow.
crazy.
The first like two, actually on Paranoid, I mean, he was probably because he was a guitar player, and they only put him on bass because they lost the bass player. The bass player wasn't interested, so this was only their second album.
You could do 4 strings. You were doing 6,
it's
right?
crazy. Well, yeah, that's the other thing too. He had like 2 strings or something for like the longest time, and it wasn't until like they really became like. There was a band. They used to be called a band called Earth. I think they were called Earth or something. And he was playing with like 2 strings.
Could he not afford the other 2 strings?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, they didn't. They never in the 70s. They didn't have anything. Like they don't. Even when they were like multi-platinum selling records, they were really stiffed with their contract and stuff. It wasn't until people like really caught on in the 80s and 90s that they were like this influential band that like they started selling all these records, and I guess their contract had changed and they were able to get money because of that. But yeah,
they were way ahead of their time.
Gosh. I
leagues
feel like
ahead. Genius like that is never appreciated in the moment. You look back in 15 years and you're like, how did nobody talk about this? Like,
I see all these like you said, I'm Gen X, so what is this called, a meme?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, right. So I see all these memes, and they're like, and it's Sabbath, and it's the Core 4, and then it's like, sorry for raising the bar too high.
Oh.
And that's basically what they did.
Yeah.
I mean, they without them, I don't think anybody would have come out, at like trying to be like that or that heavy.
It would have been so blues based, because I think if they would have been,
they started as a blues band.
Zeppelin, we'd be just listening to heavy blues, which never would have.
And it was by accident, really. Anyway, I mean, Iommi had ended up, cutting the tips of his fingers off. In an accident that he was at work, ironically, the last day at work, he was about to quit. Went into work because he was covering for somebody. Ended up slicing the 2 tips of his fingers off, so he needs these like special tips in order to play.
Whoa.
And because of that, he had to tune down. So a lot of it is like on Master Reality, it's all drop D tuning and all that. But it gives it that like really heavy sound that like nobody has ever like. What is this?
Yeah.
That's where that became. It was crazy.
From a work accident. Like, it's kind of wild how like something that is now so iconic and set the foundation for a bunch of bands like happened because some guy had a cold that day, right? Like,
unbelievable. If that didn't happen, he wouldn't. They probably would just be a regular, like you said, a blues act.
Right.
Because they wouldn't know how to write those type of songs.
It's crazy.
Thank God they grew up in Birmingham and not like London or something where they'd be more posh, and that wouldn't have happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, if you made it in London, you made it.
Yeah.
So they had that like time, with the first record that really, it started evolving, and they didn't play London until much later.
Right.
It was Birmingham where they gained that audience enough to where they had the management to go to London. And I don't think it was until this record, Paranoid, where they really started coming to the States and really making it. Because, look, back then, if you made it in America, or at least if you played in America and you got a following, you made it because you could play around all the states, But over there, it's a lot different, So.
Thank goodness for Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen them live, Sabbath or Ozzy?
Yeah, well, Ozzy I saw a bunch of times. Sabbath, I only saw them when they came around in '99. And then I saw. Then I saw them again when it was the End tour. They played Ozfest. I didn't go. And '99 they played the Beach here at Jones Beach.
Amphitheater,
Yep. I saw them there. I actually dragged my sister to that show.
Not a metalhead?
No, not even close. I remember. I think a friend of mine like got sick last minute or couldn't go, and I wasn't going to eat the ticket, and I wanted to go really badly. So I dragged her to that. She had a good time. She had a good time. She still talks about it.
Really?
Yeah, because she didn't go to many shows, so she, Sabbath.
What's her thing?
Oh,
is she like not a music person?
Oh no, she is. But like,
I don't trust
I guess when like
people.
Matchbox 20 comes to the beach, that's what
fair
she'll
enough.
go to. Yeah. But not a lot. There are live concert goers, and then there are just I'm not live concert goer. And then they played the End tour, which was I think 2016. They played MSG and they played the Beach, and both those shows were just incredible.
They still had it.
They really did.
Okay.
They really, really, really did.
And you don't see that a lot of the time. Like a lot of these like reunion band tours, you're like, oh, this is sad. Like,
yeah. I mean, it was kind of sad that Bill Ward wasn't part of it. They got their Brad Gillis, the guys from Rage Against the Machine, to play drums. He did a phenomenal job. But yeah, it was those were great shows.
That's good.
Yeah, really good.
That's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I listening to this record, I don't think I ever heard it fully through when I was younger, because like you were saying, there's so many songs that are iconic. So I guess at the time I didn't think I needed it.
Yeah.
But I realized I had the CD for Nativity in Black. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Album?
Yeah, the tribute. Yeah.
And that was all of those. That was my bands that I loved, like Biohazard, Corrosive Conformity,
Sure.
Ugly Kid Joe.
Yeah.
No shame in liking Ugly Kid
No.
Joe.
What cover? They did a cover of that.
It was a really good one.
Yeah. I can't remember what they did.
I could sing it, but
yeah.
I won't.
Yeah, that was a good tribute album.
It was.
Yeah.
And I think like in that time period, like mid 90s, like tribute albums were a really big thing.
Sure.
And that's how I came to know. Like I had a Encomium, which was the Led Zeppelin one.
Yes,
so like
that
I didn't
was good
necessarily
too.
listen to Led Zeppelin on my own by choice. It was just always on classic rock, but I loved that tribute
I'm not sure if it was on that one, but Pantera did a great cover of
Planet Caravan.
That's on there?
No, that's on, because I just looked
Is
that
that
up.
on like a
It's
soundtrack?
on Far Beyond Driven.
Oh, it's on. Oh,
it's on an album.
Gosh. Oh, all right. So it was on Far Beyond Driven.
Which
okay.
at the time I didn't know was a cover, and it's funny because we were just talking about Luke Combs and Tracy Chapman, and like there's people that don't know that Fast Car is a cover, and I literally just discovered yesterday that Planet Caravan is a cover. So you know, you can't make fun of the youth.
No.
We just don't know.
No, my 8-year-old even said, he's like, I like that song Fast Car, Daddy. I'm like, oh yeah. He's like Combs, like, oh yeah, but it's originally a Tracy Chapman. Like, no, it's not a cover. I'm like, yeah, and I just played it for him, and he liked it. Yep.
Whatever we can do to get the music in the hands.
And that's what exactly. My 8-year-old loves Elvis. Took to Elvis. You never know what these kids are gonna take to.
Right.
And it's amazing what music does for like children, even adults. You know, and you always remember, like listening to Sabbath for the first time or listening to Paranoid for the first time. You always remember where you were hearing that. You know, those iconic bands that just never leave you. You always know, and you always remember. It's great.
So, if you loved listening to Black Sabbath's Paranoid, we do have some other great albums that you could check out here in the Listening Lounge. Maybe try Metallica and Justice for All, or Kiss Alive 2, and the recently recommended by Mark and purchased at his store, High Fidelity in Amityville, New York, Iron Maiden's Power Slave.
Also was a request in our suggestion box.
It was. So I hope whoever requested it is listening to it.
Come listen to it. Hi, everybody. Today on the show, we have Phil Boccia here to talk about one of his favorite records of all time, Moving Pictures by Rush.
You can often see Phil running around, putting out fires in the technology center or doing one-on-one tech help every Wednesday at 2 p.m. But unless you share an office with Phil, you don't know how passionate he is about Rush. So today we're going to give everyone the gift of Phil and his love for Rush. Tell us about this album, Phil, Moving Pictures.
Well, what do you want to know? I would say it's probably their most celebrated work from their early years. It came out, I want to say 1981.
You're correct.
I mean, I was 11 years old at that time. It had a major impact on me at that time because you're getting into almost your teenage years, and you're thinking about getting out more and becoming your own person, developing, and I felt the lyrics from that song kind of made you think that, don't listen to anybody, follow your own path. He says in the song, in the lyrics, though his mind is not foreign to any god or government. And that line kind of stuck with me, which I think it stuck with a lot of people when they heard it back then.
Which song? Sorry, just to clarify.
That is Tom Sawyer.
The only Rush song.
Which was, from what I understand, that was Neil Peart's hardest song to do. He admits plenty of times that that's probably the most difficult song for him to drum to. It is very difficult. I've had friends who were drummers growing up, and that was like, this album was probably the only album he would practice to because of that song.
It's like the holy grail for drumming.
Yeah, and that if you can nail that song, you can nail any of his other stuff on that album, in their repertoire. So, but
and that song's the first song on this record.
The first song.
So like,
yes.
do you remember like the first time you put this? Did it blow you away immediately? Like,
yes, I remember distinctly because we had like a big, Sony floor length receiver, turntable, floor length speakers. And I used to, because of this kind of music, I had to wear headphones. Mm-hmm. And I would sit in this old rickety wooden rocking chair and rock back and forth. And I remember putting it on. I would sit under my hands and rock. And I would put the needle on. All of a sudden you hear the shh, and I was like, and listening to it and right away. And when I first heard them, it wasn't this album. It was in my sister's car. And it was Closer to the Heart, which was, I believe, off of Farewell of Kings that they play. And I said, "Who is this?" And she goes, "Oh, this is Rush. You don't know Rush?" And I go, "Who's the girl singing?" Because he sounded like a girl. Geddy Lee has a very high pitched voice. But this album, every single song off this album, to me, and to a lot of people, there's not a bad song on here.
Yeah.
And in fact, even I believe, let's see if I can give you some little, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not tips, but what do you
insights?
Insights or whatever. Let's see. Red Barchetta was about some fictitious car that Neil thought had to do with the government and sticking it to the man.
So it's interesting that this affected you in that way for those reasons, because our last guest was Sarah from News Services, and she talked about System of a Down, basically at the same age and basically the same theme of sticking it to the man and the government controlling you.
Right. I think if there's any other album and their song that fits that description of a teenager, it was their song Subdivisions off of the album Signal, which came out after Moving Pictures. There are little things that are different now, like people don't sit in cars and go to basement bars anymore, but the attitude is the same. It's getting out into the limelight, getting out, and just becoming a teenager in suburbia.
So it just resonated with you at that age and at that point in your life.
And my father never really cared for this band, but when I told him about the Camera Eye, because my father worked in Manhattan, and the Camera Eye is like an anthology to the city of Manhattan and the city of London. It's like a two-part, which almost didn't make the album. It was said that Geddy and Alex were like, I don't know, what is about this song? And their producer Terry Brown was like, no, let's stick with it. And it finally made it on the album, but they didn't record that song normally like they did the others. They did it in pieces, and then they kind of put it together. And the only other song that I can think of, but I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong.
It is the internet, yes.
Was the other song off of Hemispheres, which is La Villa Strangiato, which was supposedly Alex Lifeson's Nightmares that the song was based on. There's really not really any lyrics to that song. It's an instrumental. But that arrangement that they did between they had to do the guitars, the drums, and the bass separately because it was so intense that they couldn't do it like they normally did. Like it took them weeks, I believe, to do it, and then they finally got it together. But recording it, but whenever they did it live, like Exit Stage Left, they always came together, and it's a great song live. But and
have you seen them live before?
I have. I did see them in 1985 in Madison Square Garden, and it was probably one of the last concerts I would ever see because it's just so loud. I am not a good concert goer because it's just so loud. I just remember leaving there with tinnitus for like for days. But
it was worth it.
It was worth it. Yeah, I mean, we were kind of far back, but you could definitely hear them. Witch Hunt is another. Witch Hunt, the synthesizers in that song always reminded me of one of my favorite horror movies of that time, which was based on F. Paul Wilson's book by the same name. It was called The Keep. And it's actually a crappy movie, according to him. But I remember even talking to the author on social media about it and saying, "Hey, I haven't read the book yet, but this movie is great." And he was like, "Go read the book." And then I did, and I was like, because the movie is directed by Michael Mann, and I was like, he got your story correct for like the first half hour, and then he had some kind of brain fart. Who knows? And he kind of laughed, but. The synthesizers in that song, Witch Hunt, to me, reminded me of that because that back in the early 80s like that, that's what groups were doing.
Yeah.
They were experimenting like that. These guys were changing into that. YYZ is a really progressive song, another instrumental and I believe YYZ was the call sign when they would fly from wherever they were going into some city in Canada, and that was like what the pilots would radio to the ground control. It was like YYZ, and there's some sort of tune that they do in the airplanes, and that got Neil Peart to do that, to kind of mimic that what he heard when they were flying all the time, going back into I don't know if it was Quebec or somewhere. I don't remember. Somebody I'm sure. Somebody will tell me.
Someone will tell you. There's an interesting show that's on Paramount Plus now. That's all Geddy Lee meeting with different bass players.
Yes.
And when he meets with Chris Novoselic from Nirvana, he takes him up in his own private plane, and they fly around. So maybe flying was like Geddy's thing.
Yeah, it could be.
And if you want to read more, there's also a new Geddy Lee book titled My Effin' Life, which I'm sure you've read already.
I'm actually still reading it. I'm still, because I'm kind of enjoying it. I bought it, and I'm like listening to the audio, and he's a great narrator. I mean, a lot of people are like, when it comes to narrators, it's kind of hit or miss. I think he does very good, but I'm still enjoying it. Yes,
nice.
It's really good.
And where can you get that book, Phil?
At the Long Beach Public Library.
Amazing, great segue. Well, thank you, Phil, so much for teaching us all about the Essential album.
I will have to give this one a listen. I've slept on it for too long.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Do you think this is their best record?
It's definitely up there, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think if I had to choose, it would probably be either this one or Permanent Waves, because I think Natural Science is probably one of my favorite songs by them.
Okay, I'll have to listen to them both.
Yeah.
If you want to argue with Phil, you can find him at One-on-One Tech Out Wednesdays at 2 p.m. on the second floor. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
What's in the box?
We have got some new arrivals in the listening lounge this month. We have The Birds, Untitled, which I just learned part of the live show was recorded at Queens College. Shout out to the best library school ever, maybe? Yes. And Louis Armstrong, Louis and the Dukes of Dixieland. Perfect for Fat Tuesday. Stan Getz, Focus. Thank you to the jazz donating person who gave us a lot of great records. Now we have one from my collection because I keep buying doubles. And this is Squeeze, East Side Story. Lots of great singles on that one. And Joe Jackson, a perennial favorite. Joe Jackson's Keep Sharp has so many great songs, including One More Time. Sunday Papers. Is she really going out with him? And Got the Time, which is my favorite. Also, check out the Anthrax cover of Got the Time. It's a heavy metal classic.
Thanks so much for joining us today, and special thanks to our special guest, Mark Sendak from High Fidelity Records out in Amityville, and to our amazing tech librarian, Phil Boccia, for talking about some wonderful records that they love. You can check out High Fidelity on Instagram, and if you liked what you saw here, feel free to give us a like, to subscribe to the library's YouTube page, LBPL. You could write down below the video a record that you think we should have at the library that you'd like for us to talk about, or just tell us how great we are. You can do any of the above.
And make sure to come to our next Vinyl Club meeting, which is March 14th at 7 p.m. The theme of our night will be women songwriters, as we are celebrating Women's History Month. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Sally. Have a good one.